So for better or worse, you're stuck with myself and my two accomplices for the evening, Joel and Andy. You guys want to come up and take a seat? A seat. This is a pretty chilled event, intentionally so. Look, we run a lot of these events throughout the year as Farmers to Founders. We do them to sort of promote innovation in the industry. We know that, to Sally's point, there are a lot of problems that need to be unstuck within the way that we produce, distribute and consume food. And that's what we're here to do tonight. So I am joined by Andy Clarke from Wine Australia. Known you for a good long time now, mate. So it seems longer than it actually is, isn't it?
True.
I think so.
And clearly not as dated as that photo by the looks of it.
Well, that's what happens when you don't email me your headshot. So we steal the one from LinkedIn. So Andy leads the AgTech adoption program, has led the AgTech adoption program at Wine Australia for a long time. You've recently stepped up into a bit of a bigger, more encompassing sort of role. Long-term viticulturalist, Nuffield scholar, been working in the grape growing wine making industry for a long time, and president of
the Australian Society of Viticulture and Enology.
Thank you very much. I was never going to remember that as much as I try. ASVO. Yeah.
Technology's on you.
Before I dive into introducing Joel, did I miss any key factors that you'd like to add? I know you're a Tarantino fan.
Well, I once ran a startup as well.
You did, yeah, that's right. That was a key point that I missed.
So I've been on the side of adopter, innovator, and now extension.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And we've also got Joel Rocks here, Managing Director of AgriNous. Joel, you've been leading AgriNous for quite a long time now. You've got Bendigo local, I believe.
Bendigo local, yeah. 9 years.
Sorry?
9 years ago we started.
9 years with AgriNous, and AgriNous is working to digitise the sale and trade of livestock for brokers and sale yards primarily. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, correct. And I suppose digitising one aspect of it, but it's what we can do once we can take an archaic industry and put some digital tools around it. We can then extend that. So that's really where our focus is. 9 years and background more in, I suppose, business enterprise, locally, 10 years banking, that sort of stuff. So.
So you have finance scars as well. We can trade we can trade war stories later on. But thanks, Joel. So a very very big thank you to Joel and Andy for joining today. And a bit about myself. I really suck at talking about myself, but I've been told I'm meant to. So I am led to believe I'm the head of technology at Farmers to Founders. Allegedly, they say. My background is heavily in software development. I come from about 6 or 7 years in product development in software with some of the biggest brands in fintech in Australia. So got some really good battle scars of how to build and how to fail businesses quite well. Before that, I spent about a decade in food processing engineering, primarily in red meat and value-added product with the likes of JBS Swift, George Weston Foods, Golden Circle, just in designing plants and facilities. So I thought I would take my life as a fintech supervillain, combine it with my experience in food, and come together at Farmers to Founders and try to help people make cool stuff so that we can feed 10 billion people by 2050. So, introductions aside, tonight is a bit about just starting the conversation, really. I've introduced Andy and Joel here and invited them here because I think I really value their opinion. Kerry and Sally really value Joel's opinion as a community leader in Bendigo too. And I think that, we all have a challenge to face, a challenge that we face, which is trying to feed 10 billion people by 2050. The rate of technology escalation is massive at the moment. It's hard to know which way is up. It's increasingly difficult to navigate the technology space, especially when you're not living in it, living and breathing and understanding what that technology is, how it might change things, and what it means for you and your business, your job, your livelihood. So tonight is not just about producers, but it's about everyone in the value chain. Advisors, agronomists, people working in our food distribution and logistics systems, processing, and so on. And so what I'm hoping that everyone leaves here tonight with is just a bit of a better understanding of how they might interpret some of the trends that are coming down the pipeline, and how they might start talking to their colleagues, their family, a bit differently about how we might solve problems in the food industry with technology. We're going to do this as a bit of a fireside sort of chat. So I'm going to lob some questions over to the couch on my left. We do have time for Q&A at the end, but if you have a burning question that just arises through the conversation, feel free to ask. I think I saw everyone getting along earlier, and I think we can all get along really quite well in this room. So we'll just kick off and see how we go. So I do have my notes here. I'm not on social media while we're doing this, but to kick things off, we'll go very big picture. So I might start with you, Andy, just because you're closest to me. In the next 3 to 5 years, what do you see as the big ticket tech trends or tech verticals that will affect how we produce, consume, and distribute food in Australia?
Geez, you really have gone big there.
Start with the uppercut.
Oh, look, I mean, I think one of the challenges, and obviously I'm coming from the wine sector where we've had some significant challenges that we've encountered. So obviously we've had climate issues with bushfires and drought and floods. We've had biosecurity issues, if you want to call it, from, if you throw a global pandemic in there, there's trade issues and the like. So there's a really, it's become an unreliable, I guess, marketplace to work in. So where you can actually smooth out the lumps in your business is becoming more and more important, particularly with inflation and the like. So being able to make informed decisions around things that are going to affect your bottom line, and a lot of that often comes down to making your production systems more efficient and reducing costs. I think that's probably where the opportunities lie. So that's at a trend level. So where you're able to stack data, have those informed decisions, but also at a justifiable cost to your business, because often there's a lot of solutions that are put forward that will sell the world. They come at a cost, and you struggle to actually justify what that is for your business as well. So it's a really fine line between having a product and building a product and having all that investment go into it, but then having the market to push it into. So integrating data sets, integrating, I guess, those information sources to make better choices and solving the problems that you need to solve in that moment, I think is the key thing.
I love that you answered that question in the frame of the problems to solve. Yeah, and I think that's a really crucial way to sort of think about things. I feel, Joel, same question for you, but I feel like some of the topics that Andy touched on around data are probably quite relevant for you in your industry and AgriNous.
Yeah, definitely, and I think Andy's definitely summed that up extremely well in regards to covering a lot of those higher level things. But if you step it back, I think there's a lot of tech now that's amongst us, right through the industry and all industries, that isn't actually getting harnessed or utilised to its full extension. So you'd be looking at how can you, I suppose, disseminate some of that information, the applications and that alignment with like businesses and things like that. So regardless of how good the content is, it's harder to fill a room, like, and not necessarily, the opportunity in ag is in my area is even harder because of distance. Okay, so that decentralisation is really a problem, but it's also a benefit. So when you're looking at getting that message out and the training, and that's where sort of our business, a future roadmap of where we're going is, right, there's a whole heap of good ag tech out there, and we know what we could streamline to move that data in a meaningful way. So pick the best businesses amongst us to weave into that fabric. So if we can start to, I suppose, it's all about getting that messaging out to people in a relatable way and a meaningful, like, to get that value. So
I see Andy nodding fervently here because I know that he shares a very similar opinion. And I didn't mean to get to this point so early, but we're going to jump into it anyway, because you've sort of led us to this a bit, Joel, which is great. I think it was Callum I was just having a chat with earlier tonight about the role to play that collaboration has to play within ag tech and ag tech adoption more broadly. And I know, Andy, you've been working with Wine Australia for a few years to deploy tech, but you're not deploying a singular tech to solve a singular problem, typically. Sometimes you do. Sometimes. But I know that you've deployed a method of tech stacking. So marrying one tech with another complementary tech, which I think is what you were sort of getting to, Joel. And Andy, could you talk us through what that sort of tech stack process looks like, what results you might have seen? And then I'd love, Joel, for you to maybe chime in with ways that you've applied that same thinking with AgriNous.
Sure.
Yeah, look, I totally agree in terms of there's so much tech out there that is under explored and utilised, or it's adopted and there's a point of friction in the adoption process, so then the grower just goes, it's too hard, I'm going to walk away from it. But it could actually be what is required to solve their problem, and that's all they need. So sometimes it could be one piece of kit, but and I think so often we look for the bright and shiny that's new, and so we ignore the stuff that's been around for 20, 30 years that's perfectly suitable for the problem you're trying to solve. I guess what we've done is tried to find technologies that might complement each other, and particularly where they might have integration, so you can channel the data sources together, through APIs and have them talking to each other and consolidate those pieces of data. So, classic example might be something like a weather station and soil moisture probe. So they work so well together, but somebody might only have one or the other. But if you have those two pieces of vision, that's great. Then you could put if somebody's comfortable with that and they're getting an answer from it, they might want something different. You could put a plant sensor into the equation, and then all those things might facilitate something that's more sophisticated. But it's important to start with the base level rather than just going to the sophisticated point right at the beginning more often than not.
And nearly everything out there that's been created has started with the problem to solve in the first place. There's not too many people out there with a heap of cash just to create something because they think it's cool without a problem to solve. And the other part, well, maybe there is, but they're eccentric, I suppose. And they're not, like what you see, like in our industry, and we talk about integrations, and a classic case is what we're seeing is the rollout of sheep identification, RFIDs, right? So proudly, we started our business and benefited from the emergence of sheep EID back in 2017, 16, 17, when we were starting this business. It was around about replacing paper with digital tools to open up team collaboration. Like it's standard practice in most other industries, but this industry of ours is totally void of it. When you're looking at servicing an intermediary, working with sale yards and through agencies. So anyway, it wasn't too long down the path that we then started going, well, hey, there's all this hoo-ha about sheep getting RFIDs, and we pulled essentially our single solution together and umbrellaed it to create a sale yard, and then did some extension on that for sheep scanning. Anyway, long story short, we're now servicing nearly all of Victoria. There's only one sale yard in Victoria that we don't service. But we're also looking after all of WA, all of South Australia, Tasmania, all of Queensland's sheep, and most of New South. So, like, the reason I'm going down that path is because the incumbent that currently provides technology into the sites where we are not isn't opening or will not open up any sort of collaboration. So just 2 weeks ago, because they wouldn't collaborate with the agents who are wanting to use our software in their yards, they wouldn't work on a way to collaborate with us. Now, the biggest sale yard in the country, Dubbo, just sacked that incumbent, and we go out 1 September. So, yeah, it's about that we were willing to collaborate, and I suppose heading down that path, not all incumbent technology has that same mindset or the mindset of new technologies to work together. So I think there's some real barriers to try push through there. And you see a lot of these on-prem solutions now getting pushed off to the cloud. But there's a great difference between the willingness to operate at a business level and collaborate than just what technology can do.
I couldn't agree with that more. I think the more I see teams partnering together to deliver, I think we're seeing some really great value delivered out of that, even in, particularly where it's done on the business side rather than an advisor bringing those together. I think if we see startups and scale-ups and successful ag tech companies coming together to solve big problems, that's where we're going to see the real value in co-designing solutions with advisors and agronomists. Interestingly, Andy, you mentioned about sort of some of the technology solutions that sort of have already sat out there for a while, and Joel, you touched on it as well. One thing I'm really bullish on at the moment is this idea of technology enablers. So, we've got great, beautiful technology like AI that's coming through right now, and I feel like I need to clearly say that's artificial intelligence. I haven't done that joke before, but I'm doing it now. So, artificial intelligence, not artificial insemination, I'm referring to. AI is coming through right now, right? We're all using it. Everyone's got a chat GPT in their pocket. But we couldn't have got there without better computing standards and without higher processors and without cloud computing. To either of you, happy whoever chimes in first on this one, are there any underlying or technologies that need support that can really drive big impact for agriculture, or any underlying technologies that are not yet really brought to full fruition that we should be sort of looking towards to drive outcomes?
Got anything on the top of mind?
No, just thinking.
I can jump in. I mean, I think the AI, I'm not so, well, not in the conventional sense of AI, I'm not so clear on, but when you look at computation and processing capacity and things like that, that will enable a lot more, I think, in the autonomy space and the robotic space, because we've seen it already this year. We have a trial going with some UVC light on the back of so that's for disease control, on the back of an electric burrow robot, autonomous solution. And the challenges that we've had in Australian conditions in a vineyard, or it could be an orchard, or any of those sorts of things, is we don't have neat, pristine, tidy vineyards and the like. There's a bit more, and particularly as movement towards regenerative viticulture and things like that, they like to have grass growing in the mid-rows and the like. It becomes a barrier to LiDAR-driven things and radar-driven things. But the capacity where you have a camera on it with a live feed going into the cloud, into computation, vision imaging, actually can help drive those things now, which is actually remarkable that wouldn't have happened probably 2 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. So those sorts of things become an enabler.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
Yeah, we're involved in some exciting sort of projects around computer vision, counting, and all that sort of stuff. I see those sort of technologies, they're already extremely well established on the data sets that they're working on in those controlled environments. It is a really unique space in ag, regardless of the application in ag, is the variables that come into play. And I've been part of, we're probably on about our 6th sort of partner program with a university or something like that, where they've got these people from, sorry if you come from Melbourne or somewhere, but they've come in from the city, you know, they turn up in a brand new pair of Blundstones. It's the first time they've actually seen a bit of dirt. And they set up these big, beautiful cameras and all that, and you know, they disappear after their funding runs out. They just totally evaporate because the sympathy for the environments that they're working in is it's a very challenging space. So, like, you know, I don't think, even though the Bendigo yards are potentially getting their roof over there, it's still a very much a change, because what you see is the variability just in a sheep, whether it's coming out of the Mallee or from down Kyneton Way. You know, they present actually quite differently. So to train models and stuff like that, it is all possible, but I suppose it's that depth and variance is a lot higher. So improvements in those tech spaces will solve the problem. I just think the lead time's a little bit longer than those controlled environments.
100%. I think that's very much dovetails into what Andy was saying about computational power, you know, being the really crucial thing. Same case in point, you know, we've had a school of AI in agriculture for a very long time. Machine learning's been in ag for God knows how long, couple decades maybe. But, you know, everyone's waxing lyrical over AI now because it's a bit of a, you know, what would I say? It's a bit of a fad, it's a bit of a trend, right? Because it's got so much scalability behind it. You've both been in the industry for a really long time. This is maybe a potentially, maybe a comedic question for you guys. But what's been the greatest trend that you've seen in tech fail miserably? And why do you think it failed?
I don't know if it's a trend in tech, but maybe a reverse trend. The removal of 3G has really disrupted a lot of our guys by just about connectivity.
Yeah, like we're taking one step forward. We're going to take 2 steps forward, but we'll take 1 step back at the same time.
I'd probably case that for saying back in maybe 2019, it was actually work that got done on 4G towers that saw that the data that was getting channeled through the 3G network actually got 3G network in a lot of locations got replaced to just voice only, because they had a 4G tower in there. So I'd had a pretty big backward step on 4 years of work that we'd done in some locations. So I mean, it's great. Everyone loves pulling down 300 megasecond on a 5G network when you can get it, but just
when you can get it,
you can build some really light cloud tech that, you know, we've proudly done with offline redundancy and all that sort of stuff. But if there's nothing at all to connect to, it makes it extremely hard.
Good, great call.
Thanks to Starlink now. He's like, it's not our problem, guys. Just go and get Starlink.
But and now we're starting to see Starlink congestion happen, you know, quite broadly as well. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Andy, you got anything for me?
I don't know. That's a good answer.
It is a bloody good answer. Yeah.
No, look, I don't know if it's trends. I think everything is so sector specific to a large extent. But I think there's been, you know, whether it's AI, whether it's whatever the trend is, there's always something that's new and fashionable and what is going to be the cure-all for everything. And I think the trend has been, we will solve your problems, and not actually and trying to bring a gun to a knife fight, so to speak.
Yes.
Like it's what is it? I'm trying to solve everything for you at once, rather than actually addressing the key issue that is what's hampering the grower in the first place.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that is quite interesting, especially within the context of AgriNous, because obviously AgriNous is solving some very specific pain points, and it's not like you've entered the market and sort of thrown things wide open and said we're going to revolutionise the way that meat or that beasts move through the food production system. How did you narrow down, Joel, and find this niche?
Oh, it just came from a critical need. And probably I'll sort of go back to that last question, but I do see, like, you look at that technical trend of you referencing AI, it's not necessarily the end user benefiting from that as well, as in respect of the producer or the client. Like, just how much it's changed the way in which we work, the way our guys are doing code reviews and all that sort of stuff. The actual velocity through the business is increasing. So we're not doing 4 or 5 iterations to the lawyer for the next legal document that we're working on. We've started with a 3/4 or maybe better version of a document that goes over there, covers all the dot points and converts it into a heads of agreement or something like that. We can really start to save time through the use of it at a business level.
And cash, right?
And cash, yeah, exactly. And on the AgriNous sort of side of things, I think that there's definitely been, I suppose, a good growth trend in respect of the technology side, like what the opportunity is in that space as well, in the end user. Yeah.
Just a quick show of hands. How many in the room do we have are producers? Do we have any? One, kind of. Okay, couple. Who here helps in AgTech adoption in any way, shape, or form? Few more. Okay. I'd like to turn to. So we've talked a lot about tech. Keep an eye. What sort of trends are coming through. What things people should keep an eye out on. But when it comes to AgTech adoption itself, we've obviously got a mix of people here between sort of innovators and entrepreneurs, people working directly with AgTech adoption. Do you have, between the two of you, a couple of like hot tips and tricks for how to avoid the pitfalls of adoption, or where adoption hasn't worked, and some learnings that have come out of that? For anyone in the ecosystem, because we're a pretty broad bunch here, so.
Yeah. We're definitely putting tech into environments that have a very big distance between one user to another in regards to technical willingness, but also ability. So one early day, something that's always stuck by me is, 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason. So listen for twice as much as you talk. And then over that, it's like, if you get someone that is, from a rolling out technology side of things, if you get someone that just doesn't want to play, don't ignore them, but also don't waste time on it, because it will create negative friction in the room that you're working. Well, the best thing to do is work out what would drive them. So, for example, in a sale yard context, a lot of the old guys, it's the young people's job to do that. But you know that they're the first person tapping them on the shoulder. Can I have the report for this particular guy or this particular trading entity, this producer? So essentially carry the day through the people that actually want to see that adoption, work with them, make sure they're extremely well serviced, because at the end of the day, if the product that you're working with is good enough, osmosis will reign supreme. So working through that, but then don't forget that person that was very standoff at the start. Take them what they wanted, spend some time to explain that to them. And that's how we've found, we've got over 5,000 people interact with our system, and 1,000 people every day are tapping on glass somewhere. And that's come from just listening a lot and working out what the driver is for the person you're trying to display it to. It might not be tied to money. Like you probably won't get paid more because that person's now using the software, but if you get them speaking good of your product, it just spreads.
Great tip. Yeah.
Totally. It's value proposition. It's sort of, that's and you've got to cater it to the individual needs, but at the same time, it has to be consistent. So it's a fine balancing act. But if the simpler you can keep it, and the more defined it is, then it's actually easier to be consistent on what that messaging is as well, and defining what that looks like.
It's probably one of the biggest challenges is your messaging.
Totally.
You sell the same product. I could sell the same product to everyone in the room, but working out what the driver is, like Steph's looking for the latest bit of tech, and you know the producers in the room are just going, I just want to know how much my lamb's made, and I want to know as soon as they make that money. And then someone in finance is going, I want it to balance to the cent, and I don't want to have to worry about rounding. You know, like you just got to find what those drivers are for those people.
Yeah, and communicate in a sense that they're going to understand it. So
the messaging around it, yeah.
So you know, to battle scars. The startup that the startup that I ran was using machine learning to identify the vineyards across Australia with satellite imagery, and the guys in our team were like, there was pure data. I was data scientists, software engineers, data architects, and the like, doing it, and they were worried about the flashing light on the screen up here, or what toggle switch came up. We couldn't, but wasn't actually addressing why somebody would buy the product in the first place. So that was sort of the first failure, was not actually speaking to the customer and understanding why they would want it and what they need out of it. But it flows the whole way through. So even the tech that's old and existing and is underutilised, they're still not talking to the growers, even though, because it's been around for a long time, they've forgotten how to talk to them, or they're not talking to what the current needs are as to why somebody should care about putting their hand in the pocket and making that investment. It's not clear enough, and it's a really hard thing to define. So it's not saying it's easy, but having that clear messaging is so important.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Tim Neal, outgoing AgriTECH president, and also founder of Data Farming. He made this statement that ag and AgTech have a UX CX problem, so user experience or customer experience problem. That's kind of what I hear coming from both of you in that. Is that a statement that you agree with?
I think it's very much a challenge to communicate the user expectation and the user journey in a way to a development team to get an outcome that's, I suppose, fitting for that end user. Because a lot of the time, what the actual user wants is probably going to buck some of the design trends and, you know, the methods in which things work.
Yeah.
You know, we have a bit of a running joke, you know, the 80-20 rule, but it's 80% of 1%ers and 20% of common themes. So, yeah, it does, in our industry anyway, it does broadly, the use case does differ quite a lot. So, it definitely is, because you talk to, a good use case in that was we work with the Nutrient Ag Solutions Group right across the country, and you talk to someone in Queensland, it has to be this way, this way, this way, this way. And then you talk to someone in WA, nah, all wrong, has to go the opposite way. And you talk to someone in South Australia, yeah, all good, but just swap those two columns over. So giving people tools and teaching them how to use tools that can customise their experience is probably a fundamental thing to consider applying into AgTech.
Yeah, I love that as a hot tip, hot takeaway. Teach the tools. I feel like that's a really, really crucial thing. And I know, Andy, you do a lot of post-solution deployment work as well in your work with Farmers to Founders and the Tech Farm AgTech adoption program, where you're sort of monitoring solutions that have been deployed and looking for data and what outcomes it's actually driven. How Joel's just mentioned sort of ensuring that adoption occurs by teaching the tools. Do you see that as something that plays out in your role in AgTech adoption as well?
Oh, totally. This is one of the critical things of support with technology. So whether it's the solution provider, whether it's the advisor on the ground that might have been the conduit in between, could be any number of people, but you have to inevitably adoption of technology is change management. So and I think that's forgotten about as part of it. So you actually have to build that change management into their business and sort of help take out the friction of that process. So whether it is how they interact with it, how they connect to it, how it's just turning it on and actually working with it in the first place. Like sometimes it can be the smallest thing. If they're having a shit day, they just go, oh, it's too hard. I don't want to look at it, and you've burnt the trust.
Yep. Yeah, I like that point about adoption of tech is change management. I feel like that's really getting down to some of the most salient problems that we have with AgTech adoption in Australia. If we look at it through that lens, that it's change management, adopting tech, what advice would you give to anyone who's deploying tech for the first time or looking to deploy tech? So anywhere in the sort of like searching for a solution or deploying a solution space.
I think the no-brainer in that is that it's got to be worth it. Like the effort, whether it's got to to a multiple. So
how might someone go about doing that? Do you think, Joel? Just for clear sort of practical approach.
Yeah. It's I mean, you can tell people a million times, but it's showing them that actually reigns supreme. So getting out there and pulling in a comparable use case, or like really in our industry we see roll out our settlement solution. You're seeing simply on a P&L. So use cases this is before and after, 12 months sort of before and after. You're seeing a reduction in FTE. You're seeing a reduction in accounting expenditure. You're seeing even if sales, if your top line stagnate, like you're seeing your bottom line increasing. That's just a real simple fundamental.
Yep.
I'm not too sure if you've got some use case in like showing them in the wine space.
No, we do. Look, it depends. It's like you said, understanding what the value proposition is will vary from technology to technology. Will vary from user experiences and things like that. I think financial modelling, particularly with something where you can demonstrate it, is super valuable in being able to show it. Sometimes you can't actually get to that point. Like if it's something like a soil moisture probe, how do you actually quantify what that return on investment is? I think fundamentally, and this comes to anybody who's helping people trying to adopt tech or trying to sell it or trying to work out if you want to take it on. What is your problem? Like what is the problem, and is it causing you pain? Because if you go, oh shit, I heard about some money to get a soil moisture probe, but actually that's not actually my problem. It's a waste of money because you're not actually going to engage with it, as an example. So just really you've got to drill down into why you should actually care about it in the first place, and am I going to be willing to put the effort in to adopt it?
The really funny thing that I hear from that is that I've asked both of you guys for practical tips for people looking to adopt tech, but you've both put it back on the solution providers, which is I feel like that's a really rhetorical, compelling point that's been made, that we're not designing for outcomes on the solution side of things, and that's maybe the missed opportunity or the gap that we're starting to see a little bit in tech adoption.
No, I don't think it's about putting it onto the solution provider. I think it's about the end user and the person who might be advising in the process actually understanding what it is they want to take on.
Problem. Yeah. Okay. And do you have any advice, Andy, for how to find that deep problem?
2 ears, 1 mouth.
Beautiful. We've come full circle.
And asking
the
good
questions.
questions. You've got to ask good questions. Yeah. And it was actually one of the best things I've ever heard for anyone who has children. But I can't remember who it was. Might have been on a TED or a podcast or something. And somebody was saying, I don't say to my kids, go to school, go and learn something today. I'll say, go to school and ask good questions. And I reckon that's actually the best thing you could actually do, is to really challenge and dig down into what it is you want to know more about.
That's great advice. You're a teacher by trade, mate.
I actually don't know what I am, to be perfectly honest.
So I've got one more question for you guys before we open it up to Q&A, I think. Obviously, it's a big ecosystem out there. There's a lot of tech. We've talked about a heap of stuff just now. Big trends, big ticket items. It's a little bit scary. Do you have any advice for anyone looking to start to navigate the ecosystem of AgTech, whether that's understanding the tech that's out there, or starting to marry tech to a problem that they've discovered?
I suppose first and foremost, push harder on your why, and do your research. The research beyond just web browsing, look at Oz Industries grant recipients and things like that. Push it, sort of validate your purpose and your why, and then push harder. Not in a mental sort of stress test way, but in a product validation sort of side way, and then really starting to then ask a few people, not come back full circle again, but on the question, but starting to ask some people you think may have similar problems. That if I had this, what would that mean for your business? Or if you could do this, then what? Those sorts of, that level of validation. Like, at the end of the day, with the right people, the right team, anything's possible in tech. But you also need a bucket of cash. So to get there, you need to have a look at your pathway in that journey. It's like, you might be able to bootstrap something if you're technical. If you're not technical, like I was, like I have a very strong technical lens. First job out of school was building websites, but I'm nowhere near what it takes to be a cloud engineer. So I knew roughly where I wanted to go, but I needed a lot behind me to actually get a concept up and off the ground. So probably the best thing you can do, there's some great tools out there now, but creating just a clickable or something like that to test that theory and that application.
Yeah, look, I think if somebody's looking to explore what it should be, I think community is a really important thing. So where you can find people, whether it's a neighbour, whether it's somebody you know, an advisor, but they actually have lived experience with something, because it comes down to trust and being able to have trust, and then to have that support around you to, have somebody to call on if you've run into a problem. They might have experienced it as well. I had a conversation with somebody last week in New Zealand. They're talking about building, if you want to go down this path, if there's a few of you that are looking, having the same problems, go down that journey together so that you can create that little community of practice around, peer-to-peer learning with that sort of stuff as well. I think it's just building whatever supports you need around you to actually do it, because you might all come at it from a different lens as well, that you can sort of help solve those problems.
Yeah, I love that as a really nice practical piece of advice to sort of close on, and dovetails really nicely with Joel's point that desktop research only gets you so far. It's the community of practice, being inquisitive, curious, and driving towards an outcome for yourself. With that, I might open it up to anyone for questions. I've always got more questions.
And can you repeat the question for the microphone, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're thinking.
Oh, I knew Cullen would ask a question.
No one else wanted to say anything. First of all, thank you very much. I very much appreciate this genuine conversation. It's really great to just be kind of the fly on the wall to this right now. something you said early on, Andy, actually, about ag variables and the tech issues trying to be this general, broad solution for everything. I actually wrote down ag variables is comparable to the ag user or producers. So something that I've run into is the assumption that a problem that this customer is having might have the same user or customer persona, right? They've got this same frustration, surely they sound similar, maybe they use the same language. How would you, now I'm saying this as an assumption because it was a failure in my journey, that it was, I went in with the assumption, thought that this language would work, it did not. How would you go about kind of stripping yourself of assumptions when talking to new clients?
So the question was, how do you strip yourself of assumptions when talking to new clients?
Based on their personas and that sort of what they're...
Based on similar frustrations, similar pain points.
So how do you not stereotype? Is that a fair point?
Good question, and I think it comes down to just numbers. It's a numbers game. Like, it's the more conversations you have with people, you realise that there's nuance to the challenges, and I think this probably gets to your point before, as well as how you might need to, if you're building something, you build the fundamentals. Everybody's going to want to pick at it from a different direction. I need this, I need this, I need this. But if you speak to enough people, you'll find out what the core of it is that you need to solve for, and then I guess that's probably from a development perspective. From an engaging perspective, I think it's just be an open book. Like, just walk in with tell me what your problem is, and be open to some not great feedback as well. That's. I'll give you an example. Yesterday I met with somebody who came in and they wanted to fight. Like, they just, and I was like, whoa, like, where's this come from? And this lady said, oh, look, I'm a bit of a swearer. I said, go for it. Like, I'm not going to fall apart. And so she let it rip for 15 minutes. After an hour, she's like, oh, can we meet up regularly? I don't know if she thinks I'm a therapist or what, but it's about sort of meeting them where they are and just being completely honest and vulnerable and say, what do you need?
I like that.
Yeah, meet them where they are. That's a really good piece of advice. You've been my therapist on a few times, Andy. So
I've got to send you the bill for that.
Anyone else brave enough to lob a question over at the couch? We don't bite, promise.
Andy, you mentioned about the UVC.
Hmm.
Is that something you're working with, or is it out, or is it something they're trialling at the moment?
So, question was just around UVC and its state of adoption at the moment.
Yeah.
Fair.
Something they're using in the wine industry, is it? Or,
Yeah, look, I mean, the technology, the research was done on it probably 20 years ago. And its commercialisation, just hasn't happened until recently. Largely for it to be effective, it needs to operate at night time, or it's moved slowly, or various technology inhibitors. Nothing that couldn't be solved for, but now with autonomous solutions coming, it sort of opens up the ability for different things to work. So it's the first one of its kind in Australia that we've got a trial on in the Grampians, but it's been happening in other parts of the world. It's been working with other horticultural crops as well. They're certainly doing stuff with berries and the like. There's things in work in forestry in New Zealand as well, so trying to hit sort of fungal pests essentially. It's exciting because it can significantly reduce chemical requirements, the chemistry that's applied.
And that sort of goes back to the thing we were talking about earlier with enabling technologies, right? This case in point, like you said, Andy, UVC's been around for 20 odd years, but we haven't had the autonomous systems to be able to run something at night that makes it make sense, to Joel's point, to actually drive that bottom line outcome that makes it a feasible solution for anyone in the industry.
I think that one of the other things that, and I reckon you'd probably built your business off of this, but is market access. So if there's requirements that come in, so whether it's legislative, whether it's trade barriers, ESG, it's a huge one now with what your customers are requiring. Technology can, but it can open up opportunities to ensure that you can retain market access in particular markets, because you can collate data so that you can have the reporting aspects. You can meet those legislative and market requirements as well. So that can be an enabler.
Yeah, and one thing that we sort of talk about a lot at Farmers to Founders is really sort of starting to map who benefits from the system that you're delivering as well, because that's not always, and you guys will both see it's not always your customer, especially with AgriNous.
Exactly.
Like you've got industry bodies that are going to benefit from the AgriNous system, but they're not paying for your solution. Similarly, you've got the NLIS and the EID systems coming through that are going to again benefit from your data, but they don't pay for your products, or they might.
Oh, they are at the moment, but yeah, they won't hang around forever. It's a consultancy gig, but it is. There are, your client isn't always the person paying you money. So like we have, as I touched on before, 5,000 odd users registered on our system. We've probably only got around 100 paying entities that actually pay us. So whether they be a freemium, like a bit of a lead generation tool, just as simple numbers, we've spent over 20 million building software. The sale yard market space, which is where we're pretty predominant, is 130 opportunities, 1.2 mil a year ARR. So it's not going to fund our business. It's not going to repay the money that we've spent, but it's a lead generation to agency. There's around 800 opportunities in the agency, and that's around a 10 million a year market. So then you start to look at where those go. And that's why we see emerging tech that often get labelled as a disruptor, looking at, I suppose, taking links out of the chain. Was it Yellow Bricks or something like that that was trying to get into the real estate game? And a lot of there's so much money tipped into the real estate market and the game, and how that business works. But where I see, and come back to an earlier point, and you're looking at market opportunities, you look at parallel markets where there's been, in our industry, underinvestment in tech to the point that it still is a ripe industry for, I suppose, a peer-to-peer network to open up. But as soon as that opens up, what you're going to start to see is not just a disruption in the intermediary, their business model, but you'll see a disruption in the intermediary as the disseminator, or the person, the group that's facilitating adoption and training, and maybe aggregating a customer voice, to your point as well. So those types of step changes in tech are all just different parts of how, I suppose, the ecosystem can benefit. It's not necessarily about cutting out that intermediary.
Yeah, of course.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
So, and I'm interested to hear from your perspective. You mentioned, we were talking about collaborations before and the importance of it. Who do you look to collaborate with as an organisation?
Right now, we're collaborating with a number of, there's 3 people on a digital beta program. One's an insurance provider that essentially underwrites the majority of transactions that are happening into the large producer. You talked about Cargills and JBS. So you're talking around, I think it's around about 30 billion a year that's settled through those sort of larger players. So that's one integration that we're playing with. Another one is our CTO is the lead external advisor for the new NLIS system that's currently getting built at the moment, and will be the first integration. We are the biggest pipe of data into the NLIS, single system pushing data into national database. So, yeah, we're definitely doing a lot at an integration level. But we look at B2B integrations. There's a great company up in Blackall, Queensland. Female founder, co-founders set up. They're very talented ladies in the animal health and veterinary space, and they've got a platform called Black Box, which looks at growth rates. And you're probably familiar with Black Box.
Yeah, no, Black Box.
So we're essentially taking, we're handling induction or exit of animals through that and just automating the transfer of data. What it does, it puts some beautiful looking dashboards up in front of the producer that goes, buy animals from this location, from these types of producers, you get a better outcome. So you're looking at doing more with less, so feeding more people and higher return from operations on the ground. Those sort of integrations are sort of the forefront of where we're heading.
I feel like that's a really good place to sort of pull up stumps, ending on that note of collaboration across, you know, multiple different players in the ecosystem. So thank you so much, both of your time, collective brains, and answering all of my interrogative techniques. Just give a bit of a hand for Andy and Joel. Thanks. And I think that Sally will finish up with a bit of a closing.
Yes, stay there.
Oh, I'm just going to slot the slide for you.
Oh, okay. You have to operate it and do as well. Look, that was a fantastic chat, guys, and it's really nice to drill into a specific topic, industry. I mean, tech falls across all industry sectors, but to do something specifically for AgTech is really great. So thank you. It means so much more when it's practical on the ground, and of course bringing in Pete's expertise as well. So thank you to Sally, Ember, and Callum up the back recording for us. Just in closing, on behalf of Startup Centre Victoria, I'd just like to remind everyone that we have a pre-accelerator program starting later this month, and there's a few people in the room that have actually been in our programs. So Steph and Mark and Joe and Callum. So if you'd like to know a bit more about it, ask them. It is free. It is, if you have an idea, you want to test it, or it's newly formed, we can help you develop it further. We have some expert advisors, mentors that just really are there, your big cheer squad, and for a 12-week, yeah, we'll keep it real, in a very accessible way. Most of these masterclasses are delivered online, so you can be anywhere, milk the cows, run in, jump on the computer, whatever the case may be. That happens. So we have had people go through the program, but it's across all industries. Interesting conversation, the principles of your value proposition, how you brand yourself, how you integrate tech, all of that can be covered through there. So please talk to me or any of the guys in the room if you'd like to know more. But please, if you're interested and you're ready to give it a red hot crack, just jump online and put an expression of interest in the next week, and we'll plug you into a great opportunity. And we'll look forward to Sally, Pete, maybe we'll do something else. We've got another little workshop on tomorrow morning.
We
but
do.
Who knows what we'll bring to you later in the year or next year.
We'll see a few of you there tomorrow morning, I believe.
Yeah,
So,
great. Yeah, I'll be there too.
lovely. Thank you,
All
Sally,
right,
and thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Could I just bother you all for one last favour? I'm just going to pop up a QR code. I need to grab some feedback on how we went tonight. So when you get a chance, please drop us your thoughts. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. I can't wait to give feedback. I can't wait to give you feedback.
Yeah, you're... No.